Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Got Harem in Elden Ring. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. I've gone by many names. Upon my name. It was the duty of the strong to guide the weak. It was the duty of the strong to destroy the wicked. It was the duty of the strong to stand where everyone else fell. Powerful words. Old words. Ancient beyond counting really, but he held to them all the same. He took strength from them. Solace sometimes, in his more morose moments, few though those were. He was strong, and so it fell to him to look after those weaker than him. Such was his purpose. After all, he was Naruto Uzumaki, and even here in the badlands of the lands between, stranded far from his home, he still had purpose. Kurama scoffed softly in his ear. You know that's not your name anymore. His lips pursed. He didn't like his current name. Sorry. Old habits really do die hard. Speaking of dying in your left. How rude of him. He'd forgotten all about dinner. The rune bear hadn't. It rushed him. He planted his feet, grit his teeth, and faced it head-on with a smile. The very earth trembled at the beast's charge through the forest, its massive bulk bowled down a mighty oak. A rock shattered in the face of its fury, and still he didn't budge. Hair gone preternaturally white rustled in the wind and flashed across his face. He blew a stray strand out of his eyes, hands rising. Rough palms slammed forward and snagged the beast by its paws. As always, he reveled in the look of utter shock and surprise his prey wore. Rune bears could not speak, but the beast made a noise of confusion all the same. Its ilk were used to being the biggest, meanest things for miles around. They killed where they wanted, when they wanted, how they wanted. Those that dwelt in the badlands were bigger still, even bigger than a boy in his 19th year. And he just caught one. Then again, most men his age couldn't just wrestle a rune bear. He supposed that was hardly sporting, given the circumstances, but needs must. Seizing the moment, he dragged said bear forward and headbutted it, stunning before driving a vicious punch right into its eye. The roar that followed was one of purest fury. It lashed out like any animal would and tried to drive him to the ground, only for him to catch its arm and sling it over his shoulder. The earth trembled as it crashed down on its belly. From there leaped onto its back and grabbed it by the head. It went wild in return, snarling and thrashing for all it was worth to dislodge him all in vain. A shame. He'd had high hopes for this one. Without him, it would have taken a score of warriors from the Lu tribe to bring a behemoth like this down. Alone? It was just a warm-up. How the old him would have balked to see him now. What did that say about him, about what he'd become when he could wrestle a rune bear with his bare hands and triumph? That was a bad joke and you should feel bad. He hummed a laugh, lost in the noise. Maybe so. The rune bear bit up at him, only for its teeth to shatter on his forearm. Sorry about this, he rumbled an apology in return. But the little ones need food. Naruto tightened his grip upon its head and closed his eyes. I give thanks for this meal. His hands twisted. Breaking someone's neck really was an awfully lot harder than it looked. Least of all for a rune bear. The old him would never have been able to manage it without Kurama's aid. Now he had the strength for it. The bear's body went limp as he snapped its neck with an awful crunch, slumping to the ground beneath him. He rode it to the ground and strode off its spine. Silence reigned supreme in the lands once more, leaving him to assess his prize. He had been right to hunt this beast down after all. Its meat would feed the tribe for a few days, at least, and its hide would be put to use. By all accounts, he had done well. Nothing here would go to waste. So why did he feel so empty inside? An alto familiar whirl of golden light sprouted from his shoulders, claws gripping his shoulders for balance. A vulpine visage loomed over his shoulders to glare at him. Had anyone else seen it, they might have had quite the fright. As things stood, Naruto merely sighed. He knew what his partner was going to say. This argument had been a long time coming. Because you're bored, this one was even less of a challenge than the last. He clicked his tongue and waved a hand through the chakra, shooing the fox away. Don't sulk, Kurama. What else can I do? We haven't had a single worthy foe since we were reborn in the CC lands unseen. I believe you mean the lands between. But you know what I mean. The fact that I can't even remember the name of this bloody continent proves my point. He was right about that much, at least. In the 19 years since he'd been reborn as Hoara Lu, he hadn't once faced a worthy challenge. Not enough to make Kurama emerge at any rate. He liked to pop out every now and again if only to stretch his limbs and prove he still could, but he could deny that the last few years had been almost peaceful. How boring? No, don't think like that. Mustn't think like that. We'll eat good tonight at least. If you say so. Norat spared a glance to the corpse. It was going to be a long walk back to the tribe. The Lu tribe awaited him at the foot of a hill. Naruto could see the smoke rising from the campfire even from here. He had fond memories of this place, brutal though his second upbringing became. The tribe was a place of strength, where the strong thrived and the weak died, so it had been until he usurped the last chieftain and claimed his seat. Nevertheless, it was his home. He remembered the smell of tanned leather, the warm fires, and watching the setting sun with the other children when he'd been younger. Of that generation, only he had survived to reach adulthood. But the camp remained. Arrayed in a series of concentric rings, each portion of the tribe was protected by a number of planted posts in the dirt, the better to defend from an attack. Warriors were stationed on the outside rings, with cooks inward, medicine men and women deeper still, and the chieftain's his tent positions squarely in the center. It was here that he brought the rune bear to divest it of its head. And was here that he learned he had a guest. A woman came to your tent, chieftain. One of his guards saluted with his axe as he drew near. We tried to stop her, but she wouldn't be deterred. He jerked a thumb over his shoulder. She awaits you within. Here, he hauled the headless rune bear their way. Take this carcass and divvy up the meat. Make sure the women and children get their fair share first. Women and children, eh? The guard made an annoyed noise. Oren's liable to take half the damn thing if you let her. Oren likes cutting and carving, so long as blood's involved. Let her help you and that should sate her for today. His fellow barbarian grunted, then gave the corpse a kick. You're keeping the head then, boss? I am. He hefted the beast's skull. It was my kill, so I get first claim. This is mine. Halcyon and his boys won't like that. You're hogging all the trophies. He shrugged. Then they are free to challenge me for my seat. They just might. A silver brow rose. Is that a threat? The man balked, realizing he'd overstepped his bounds. And not at all, chieftain. Just remarking on it. He wasn't. Remarking or not, a challenge was a challenge. Her mounted the bear's skull on a nearby hook and turned to face his so-called guard. Up went the facade once more. Have you forgotten who I am? He towered over the smaller man, casting him his looming shadow. I am Hoara Lu, your chieftain. I climbed a mountain of broken bodies and shattered bones to lead this tribe. He touched a hand to his bare chest. I still wear the teeth of my last challenger around my neck, still drink from his skull as a cup. He leaned closer still, all but glowering down at him. If you have a challenge to declare, speak it with steel or not at all. Am I understood? A quick bob of a nod was his reward. Not good enough. He was in no mood for games. His fingers bit down on the man's arm. I said, am I understood? The guard yelped in pain. Yes, sir, chief. Good. He laid a massive hand on the man's shoulder. Now you have a bear to skin. Best get to that before I skin you. He watched the man take the rune bear by one leg and drag it away, watched him until he was certain he was gone. Only then did he sigh. What did it say for his leadership when these people only listened to strength? His silver tongue was next to useless here. Anything viewed as weakness was to be cut out. It was the reason maniacs like Oren did so well here. Folks like her enjoyed their blood sport a tad too much. He didn't. Lording your strength over those weaker than you was a sin in his eyes. He didn't enjoy hurting people, but sometimes, violence was the only language these people understood. Change would take time. If he had things his way, he would have simply talked these people the right way round and been done with it. Therein lay the rub. He'd already tried. It didn't work. The people of the Badlands didn't care for flowery words or long-winded speeches. He had learned that awful, immutable truth the hard way. To them, strength was all. Strength was everything. Strength was life. There was some small semblance of hope for the children, for the little ones, to keep them from being indoctrinated, but he held little belief in the rest. Kurama heaved a sigh of his own. You'll be having another challenge soon, methinks? Naruto clicked his tongue at the thought. Not from that one at least. In the Badlands only strength mattered. So long as he was strong, they would follow. He dragged this tribe to survival, kicking and screaming if need be. Shaking his head, he pushed the tent flap aside and stepped through. His tent was bare of ornamentation, save a humble cot and a stand where he kept his weapons and armor. Not that he had much use for either these days. In the 19 years since he'd been reborn in this barbaric body, he had yet to find anyone capable of standing against him. He preferred his bare hands to an axe, but he could swing one better than any other in a pinch, though the need rarely called for it. That changed today. For you see, there was indeed a woman in his tent. She was sitting on his bed, damn it. He'd wanted to use that. He took her in at a glance. She was rather tall, only a head or so shorter than him. Her long hair shone like spun gold lopped in a loose braid, her eyes a deep, piercing shade of yellow amber, framing a youthful face and a bemused smile besides. She wore a long flowing black gown that clung to her bountiful bosom and proud posterior, enhancing her every curve, of which she had many. Here was a woman who knew she was beautiful and was proud of it. He'd peg her in her early 20s. Nearly of an age with him. Yet for all her curves and easy smiles, he wasn't fooled. This was no homely harlot from the civilized lands. This was a warrior. He could see it in her stance. She kept her balance on her left foot, yet leaned forward just so on her right, ready to spring into action at the slightest provocation. Her smoldering gaze raked over him intensively, probing for any signs of weakness. She eyed him and he eyed right back without so much as a hint of an apology. In the end, he took the initiative. Bold of you to walk into my camp without an escort, let alone unarmed. I am never unarmed. Her voice was soft yet powerful and rang with truth. She sounded confident if nothing else. And you are Hoara Lu, are you not? Chieftain of the Badlands. That was the name he'd been given in this strange second life of his. Yes. He would have chosen something better. Godfrey had a nice ring to it, you know? She stood and considered him anew. Her gaze flicked up and down the length of him once more, regarding him as one might a cut of prime meat. You're every bit as I imagined you'd be. But are you strong? A dangerous thing to ask a barbarian of the Badlands. He tilted his head in return. I could say the same of her? The retort achieved the desired effect. A hammer of golden in at his head with blistering speed. Naruto had no idea where it had come, nor how she'd conjured it out of thin air, but the result was still the same. He caught it an inch from his face and held it there, stopping her assault cold. She made a startled noise and struggled against him, tried to overpower high, only to find herself outmatched. He bent her backward, nearly forcing her to the ground. You come into my home and attack me? The words tumbled out of him in a low growl. Do you have a death wish? He was utterly unprepared for what followed. The stranger woman didn't try to attack him again, far from it. Wild delight broke through her impassive facade, shattering it like so much glass. She dispelled her hammer of light and gave herself to gravity, then fell backward, bouncing on his bed with a euphoric grin. I knew it, she brought her hands together in a delighted clap and but squealed the words. I thought you'd be a bit shorter, sure, but you're definitely the one. Naruto's mind fizzled. Ha! You have no idea how relieved I am right now. Quick as a flash, the buxom blonde sprang back to her feet, bosom bouncing. How long I've spent looking for someone like you. Someone like me? His words doused her enthusiasm and she realized she'd been gushing. Ahem, she flushed and mastered herself with a quick cough into her first. Forgive my enthusiasm. I lost myself for a moment, there. That is to say, I have need of a strong champion to help me set the lands between in order. Will ye serve? He turned away from her and lumbered to the wash basin at the foot of his bed. No. Excuse me, her noble facade cracked again. Do you have any idea who I am? He ran his hands through the water and began to clean his face. Should I? I am Queen Marika the Eternal. Should that name mean something? He blinked once. I wasn't aware we had a queen. Ugh. Here at last, she faltered. Yes, well, I'm not queen yet, but I will be once the Erd tree is fully grown and my capital is constructed. Bold, pretentious girl. The ghost of a smile fractured his weathered, dirty face. Why are you here then, oh naughty Queen Marika? She huffed and stamped a foot. He found himself amused by this less-than-formal side of her. I am new to my godhood and was told by the greater will to choose a consort for my reign to come. She palmed her face, heaved a mighty sigh, and blew a stray strand of golden hair out her eyes. Every man in these gods-forsaken lands has been lacking all save you and one other, and I am not bonking my brother no matter what that silly space slug says. Thank you very much. Grumbling under her breath, she looked away. Not a chance in the darkest hell, Radagon. Kurama started to laugh in his head. I like this one, she has spirit. His brow crept higher. What was that last bit about? Her face went red. Think not of it. I'm fairly certain I heard. You heard nothing. Strange girl. But this wild woman was speaking again, and he found his curiosity aroused regardless. The lands between are in turmoil. Fire giants rage in the north, the sorcerers of Raya Lucera lord over the west, and the Storm King consorts with dragons in the east. And there are darker things that lurk in the shadows and where the flesh of their fallen foes. A brief flicker of fear flashed across her radiant face before she banished it again. I came to these lands to serve as a champion of the Golden Order to come, but I am beset by foes on every side and cannot best them all alone. My loyal shadow, Maliketh, was grievously injured in the last battle. Radagon and I cannot be everywhere at once. As such, our forces are suffering greatly. I fail to see why any of this should matter to me. It should because you're like me. She jabbed a finger at his chest. I can see it in your eyes. You crave a proper battle. Join me and you'll never lack for strong foes. Had he only been Hoera Laux's blasted name, that might have been enough for him. But it wasn't. He'd lived a life of plenty once before, and he was not necessarily content with the order of things here in the Badlands, but he was resolved to protect his charges. I have my own people to look after. I must refuse. Ally with me and I shall see every man, woman and child in the Badlands cared for. Better yet, I'll give your warriors foes to fight. Her counter gave him pause. Didn't you just say your forces were effectively bogged down at the moment? We have resources aplenty, but not enough warriors. There is food aplenty in the Altus Plateau. Tempting. Very tempting. There had to be a catch. There always was. He stared at her. And all I have to do is be your consort. None better, she beamed up at him radiantly. I'm not bending the knee to another god. I'm not asking you to. Marika smacked his bare chest with an open palm, only to recoil with a wince as her hand smarted. You have my word, not just as a queen, but as a fellow warrior. As to the whole consorting bit, she gave a small shrug. We can bond over slaying our enemies. She grinned up at him as she blinked once, fluttering long lashes. Familiarity and intimacy can come afterward. Hoera Lu. Godfrey, he said. Pardon? If I'm leaving my life here behind, then I'll need a new name. Now seemed as good a time for it as any. I don't much like my current one. I've decided upon Godfrey. Marika's grin grew. You really do live as you please, don't you? Naruto arched a pale brow. I do. What of it? Errors were made. That settles it. Settles what? Marika jumped him and buried her face in his chest. I'm keeping you. Whatever comes our way. Name thy blade. There were complications, of course. Such was life in the Badlands. Things were seldom simple. Indeed, no sooner had Naruto and Marika set out for the capital than someone chased them down. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose. Aren't no. Orin, yes, a pale girl clad in blood-red leathers growled up at him, pale eyes livid while a bemused Marika looked on. I was born to slice and slash, to rip and ravage. She flung out a hand and shook her head fiercely, nearly smacking him in the chest with her long ghost-white braidenly to see his expression and think better of it. She stomped a foot instead. Yet you would leave me behind with these mewling pups? Her dark lips curled in a sneer of utter scorn. And I will not have it. I am a warrior, not some broodmare. Naruto heaved a sigh. Wild, excitable girl. He liked to think he'd curbed the worst of her tendencies during his tenuous time as chieftain, but moments such as these reminded him how truly exasperating she could be. She had been worse once, long ago, when he'd first found her in Badlands. This wasn't a tantrum. He'd seen her tantrums and the bodies the shape changer left in her wake when she was angry. Hey, let's take in the crazy murder hobo girl. I can fix her. Sir. In a sense he had, but he'd also made her much, much worse. Oren was a killer through and through to be sure, but she was a killer utterly devoted to him now. Both good and bad. That good in that Oren believed him to be some sort of dark murder god made flesh and would obey him without fail. Bad, because she had a terrible tendency to throw an absolute fit whenever he left her behind or didn't pay her enough attention to her. That he was considering doing the former now didn't speak well of her behavior. A sulky Oren was, as he'd learned long ago, a stabby Oren. And a stabby Oren was best placated. However, Lu, Godfrey, Naruto, these were but names to her. Insofar as she was concerned, he was a lord of mayhem and murder. And she was right in a sense. He'd murdered many to keep control of this tribe, to keep them alive, and he would kill more yet if it meant dragging them out of the Badlands. His killing days were far from over. However, Lu was cold and ruthless. He hoped he could be better as Godfrey, because people didn't listen to him when he acted like himself, like Naruto. A crown was warranted with strength. No more. No less. You're leaving to be with a goddess, father. His apprentice scuffed at the ground with her bare foot. But it's not fair. Did I do something wrong, father? Though they were nearly of an age and not related by blood, she ever insisted upon calling him that. Strange girl. He tried rally. You would be in charge of the tribe while I am away and bring them here once I make certain it's safe. I don't want to be in charge. She slashed a slender red dagger through the air, stabbing at some unseen foe as she stalked after him. I want go with you. I could become a goddess. A goddess of murder. We could lacerate the world together. She raised her gaze to look up at him, anger smoothing out for a moment. Doesn't that sound nice? He grimaced at the very notion. It sounds like the formless mother, so no? In his heart of hearts, he'd hoped that would dissuade Oren. Not so. She made a grab for his arm, latching tight. Please don't go, milky white eyes pleading in a rare moment of sanity. I don't want to stay here. Not alone. It was a fleeting thing, gone in the next instant. If you must go, then take me with you. I was born to kill and murder, not watching mewling pups. Oh, do let her come. Marika called ahead of them. We could always use another blade in the battles to calm. Oren absolutely hissed at her, black lips thinning in a scowl. I wasn't talking to you, godling. The eternal queen tittered. Chimichimichim. She has spirit. I like her. One battle maniac to another. It would mean leaving Halcyon in charge of the tribe in his absence, but surely that wasn't such a bad idea. People liked Halcyon. That big bear of a man, no relation to Runebears despite the comparison, could stand to learn a thing or two about proper leadership, and besides, it would keep him out of his hair. And Oren under his watchful eye. Was he really considering this? Kurama offered the mental equivalent of a shrug. Better the devil you know than the one he didn't. Yes, he knew the saying. You will be on your best behavior. Oren perked up. You mean? Naruto didn't give her the chance to speak further. He knew better than that by now. You will do as I command. Yes, she babbled, quick to placate him and remain by his side. Yes, of course. Your will is my will. And you will stay your blade until I tell you otherwise. Do you understand? She made an unhappy noise at that. Must I? Oren, he grabbed her by the chin and forced her to look up at him. Do you understand? There will be many foes for you to face where we are going. But only if you listen. If you cannot, you will be sent home to wait with the Ret. Can you be trusted with this task? Trusted? Her milky white gaze lit up with almost childlike delight as she nodded fervently. Despite being a woman grown, she posed a rather simplistic outlook on life. In her shattered mind, the only good enemy was a dead one. By that logic, it was best to bring her along after all. If left to her own devices, she might kill half the tribe in a fit of pique. At least here he could keep an eye on the wayward shapeshifter. Coral her, mold her into someone better. Someone more sane than she was now. Of course, my Lord Ball, he never understood why she called him that sometimes. You can trust me. Your will is my blade. Marika made a bemused noise behind him. Well, that was a quick turnabout. He let her chin go and patted her head. Good girl. It was all too easy to win her over. All it took was a bit of praise. Oren skipped after them. Lendl was very much under construction. Such was Naruto's first thought as he laid eyes upon the so-called capital of the Altus Plateau. They'd built their walls strong, favoring the exterior over the interior, and it showed, even from here. It was a city built in a hurry, a castle constructed under attack, and they expected yet another assault, judging by the harsh look of the knights as they drew near. Stranger still, he could see a strange golden glow over the city, an almost ethereal light that seemed to turn the sky gold with resplendent radiance. That would be the Erd tree, Marika informed them primly as they passed through the gates. It's not fully grown yet. Once it is, you'll be able to see it all across the lands between. Naruto made a non-committal noise, thoughts turning inward. They didn't have enough warriors here. Not nearly enough. If another attack came. He brushed such thoughts aside and kept walking. More than a few passing peasants paused to balk at him as he strode past, no doubt seeing him as great towering Goliath, a barbarian from the Badlands. Let them gape and gawp all the liked. He cared not. His thoughts were elsewhere. The air was thick with life here. It almost felt like chakra. Almost, but not quite. He hoped Marika's so-called Erdtree wasn't another one of those blasted Otsutsuki trees. The world didn't need another god tree. God-free? A quick blink drew him back to the present. At least Marika wasn't calling him Hoaralu anymore. He'd cast that title aside, just as surely as he'd left the name Naruto behind. It was easier in theory than practice, he supposed. Although he responded to the name Naruto and retained nearly all his techniques from his last life, he didn't quite consider himself a shinobi these days. But if one of those trees was here, he would rain fire on this city. Relax. Kurama soothed him. It doesn't feel like a god tree. Not those we knew, at any rate. Oren trailed them like a curious puppy, one with a penchant for murder, eager to drink in the sights. Where are we headed, Queen of Gold? The people must see their new Elden Lord. Marika smiled for a passerby, waved to another, and kept walking all without missing a beat. Afterwards, I suppose we shall have to begin our campaign in earnest. North, south, east and west. She flicked her fingers in each directional as she said them. We have enemies on all sides. To attack one may well open us to another. Oh, but before all that, I'd like you to meet the greater will. Right, the so-called Twiggy Tree God. He scowled. Remember, I won't bend the knee. And I do not expect it of thee. She smacked his arm. That silly space slug asked me to find a strong husband, not a holy man. Besides, we may yet meet Radagon if he's in. Her lip pursed at that, as though she took taste of something sour. He may take issue with you. He quirked a silver brow her way. What of it? I'm not here for his blessing. Well said, let's be off then, shall we? Yes, yes. Oren waved a pale hand in dismissal. Very pretty words. Now where are our enemies? Marika quirked a bemused blonde brow her way. Aren't you the bloodthirsty one? She licked her blade. My only purpose is to please my lord and kill his foes. Oren. Naruto's voice rose in warning. Yes, father. Sorry, father. She subsided with an unhappy sigh. He hid a grimace behind one hand. Best deal with that before her temper spiraled out of control. Here. He crossed his hand and conjured a shadow clone in a plume of smoke, a perfect replica of himself in all his towering glory. Go play with him outside the city. Oren squealed in naked delight. Can I? You can if you manage to hit him. That was unlikely. She'd never managed to dispel any of his doppelgangers. Run along now and be a good girl. She was off like a shot, practically dragging the bunshin behind her. Naruto spared a brief prayer for soon-to-be-exasperated self. Doubtless he'd receive some interesting memories once the clone dispelled itself. But if it kept Oren occupied in the meantime and let her blow off some steam, all the better. Marika granted him a long, lingering look and planted a fist on her hip. And how long were you planning on keeping that little trick from me, dear Godfrey? Long enough. He rumbled a laugh and lumbered ahead of her. Hat Giant's staircase looked like the right way. Don't dally now. It didn't end there. Marika had questions, of course. Most did after they witnessed his signature jutsu, and she was much too Marika to ignore what she'd just seen. He would have thought less of her if she meekly accepted everything. Result, she pestered him all the way up to the Erd tree, asking questions for almost every other step. Are the two of you? I'm not her father, not really. He shook his head with a grunt. We're not like that. It's a term of endearment. Oren thinks I'm a god. She worships me and no, a stern glance followed. Not like that. The goddess grinned. I suspect she'd be delighted to lay with if you let her, but back to those clones. How many of those can you make? He knew what she was up to, but played along for the sake of the game. As many as I wish. Oh, she made a pleased noise. And are they durable? When I wish them to be. Her eyes all but sparkled. Good. One last question. By the sage, she really was a female version of his old self. It was rather endearing. She beckoned him down and stood on the very tips of her toes. Her lips brushed his ear, close enough to touch, in a manner meant to tease. Can they put out? A lifetime ago, Naruto would have coughed and spluttered a dozen denials. Even now he felt that impulse, but not quite. He stamped it down and granted her a mildly bemused look. He knew her game. She was trying to rile him, break his facade, the better to get the measure of him. She had an impish streak, it seemed. Maybe she enjoyed a bit of mischief herself. You'll have to see for yourself. Her grin gained an edge. I knew you were a keeper. Soon enough they crested the steps and reached their destination. Marika had spoken true. Erdtree was but a sapling, a small tree only. Tiny though it was, it still dwarfed them all. Naruto released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. This wasn't a Otsutsuki god tree. Oh, it was a tree that held a god, but it didn't feel like an Otsutsuki, and he knew well the feeling of that slimy chakra. This felt more akin to light and life, a beacon of energy from beyond the stars itself. Not chakra. Thank the sage for small mercies. But he'd had quite enough of those, thank you very much. A man stood near it, clad in dark robes, head bowed in benediction. He caught sight of pale skin and flaming red hair, curious before the newcomer turned to face him. Whomever he was almost exactly of a height with Marika. He had a sinking suspicion as to who it was, but even so he held his tongue at least until Marika flung out an army in greeting. I've returned, brother. The stranger raised his head and turned to face them with laconic slowness. Sister, he grunted once, then noticed him at her side. And who is this? My Elden Lord, of course, she beamed. I finally found him. Naruto decided to be the bigger man and offer his hand. You must be Radagon. The redhead sneered and made no attempt to reciprocate. And you're the brute that my sister has chosen. Marika Tutig. Be nice. Why should I? He doesn't seem the sort to understand. Naruto fought down a twitch and the urge to squash the puny many before him. Oh, so he was one of those then, was he? It was in that moment that he knew. They'd never be friends. Rivals for life. It was with this in mind that he launched the first salvo. It must hurt having that stick up your ass. Marika loosed a decidedly unladly-like snort that soon dissolved into a sea of giggles. Radagon bristled. Now see here, you barbarian from the Badlands. You have come. A deep voice cut through Radagon's diatribe as all portion of the Erdtree's bark peeled back. From within slithered a presence. An entity. Marika was right. It really was some sort of silly space slug, akin to a snail without its shell. The Elden beast was all black and dark blue, yet threaded through with golden veins, shining as though lit from within. Its long neck craned down to regard them with a single glowing eye of purest gold. He stood his ground beneath it, even as Radagon bent the knee. Marika, for her part, didn't budge either. Naruto Godfrey glared at the Elden beast and it glared back. The world held its breath. Someone had to bend first. It was not him. Suitable. A lone word rumbled from what passed for the beast's throat, followed by many more. He will give you many strong Empyrean children. I expect great things. Go forth and conquer in my name. Together, you shall bring order to the lands between. Its peace said, the eldritch creature turned and slithered back into the Erd tree, leaving the three of them to balk at its rather abrupt departure. Well, then Marika bounced once on her heels and steepled her fingers with a lilting laugh. That went swimmingly, don't you think? She smiled. It was not a nice smile, rather one that promised pain and pranks for their enemies. Oddly enough, it only endeared her to him all the more. Shall we begin? We each have our pride. The trick is knowing when to use it and when to resist it. After all, which is stronger? An unstoppable force? Or an immovable object? Let's find out. Naruto/Godfrey. Name thy moon. Liurnia would be their first target. Ironically, it was chosen not through mean of wisdom or any such stratagem, but merely selected on a lark. Naruto chose it at random. Storms were something he'd dealt with before, dragons didn't sound terribly exciting, and he wanted to save those so-called fire giants for last. But sorcerers? Those were interesting. Although, he wondered just how giant these fire giants really were. Large as a biju? Bigger? Unlikely, Kurama chortled in his head. Maybe so, but it was fun to imagine something on or near Kurama's level. Fighting the would be a good challenge if nothing else. And speaking of levels, you mean to face the sorcerers alone, do you? Marika touched one hand to her cheek as she considered the map of the lands between sprawled beneath the three of them. Interesting. 3, because much to his chagrin, Radagon was included in this strategy session. He made himself known now with an angry snort. Honestly, was the man ever not angry? Did it have something to do with him? You will perish under a hail of spellfire, barbarian. Yeah, probably him. He granted him a crooked grin. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Marika tapped a finger against the map. Any attempt to approach the castle will leave you terribly exposed. It's a veritable killing ground. There will be casualties. He understood the logic, of course. In terms of sheer physical strength, sorcerers were weaker than their warrior counterparts. It was getting close that was the problem. In technical terms, a caster was weak to physical attacks, but in the time it took to close the distance, they'd rain hell down on you. And he'd be facing a great many of them here. Any army he brought would have to wade through a wave of blue death, assuming they wanted to reach the main gate. Of course, he had a plan for that as well. This is the very height of stupidity. Radagon shook his head. Put these foolish ambitions to rest. Not a bad line, his grin grew another inch. I'll be sure to teach it to my kids someday. Oh, Marika made a pleased noise from her perch. I won at least 9. He knew she was just playing along, of course, but Radagon didn't. That was half the fun. That was not what I meant, Godfrey. Finally comprehending the jape, Radagon's pale face turned an amusing shade of puce as he slammed a fist down on the table. Cease this foolishness now. Marika and I have sent armies Liurnia many a time and suffered for it. What can you hope to accomplish alone? Plenty of things. He could have named them all, but really, where was the fun in that? He only grinned. Come and see. Radagon recoiled. I will do no such thing. Doubtlessly he thought it a trap. Such a sad, strange little man. He pitied him and his paranoia. Suit yourself. Orin can stay and keep an eye on you. He rolled his massive shoulders, rolled in a shrug, silently reveling in the latter's giggle. I'm sure Marika has a remote viewing spell in any case. Maybe a crystal ball or something. Do you? At the Suntobi Queen's nod, he rumbled a laugh. It settled then. Be sure to watch closely. He loomed large over Radagon with a toothy grin. No doubt Marika's brother thought it had far, far too many teeth for his liking. And try not to blink. Marika hid a hum behind her hand. Do try not to massacre them all, dear consort. We can't have any vassals if they're dead. He barked a laugh and walked out of the chamber. Killing? Who said anything about killing? Death was boring. No, he had greater plans for Liurnia. They never learn, do they? Rennala gazed out from her balcony at her kingdom below, regarding the slowly approaching army with a thinly veiled sneer. Once again the dogs of the Golden Order had come to try and take what was hers. Their fierce, foolish pride would avail them naught. They were but a wave that would break itself upon the rocky shore of Liurnia as they ever had before. Truly, she couldn't fathom their sheer stupidity. No matter. She would beat sense into their skulls until they learned. Her scouts had spoken of an approaching force some days ago. She had accepted such of course, knowing the order would not easily surrender, much less learn its lesson. If they wanted to send more men to the slaughter, she certainly wouldn't stop them. Rising from her perch, she muttered a series of sorceries under her breath. Come then, my dears. Let us give them a show they shan't forget. Her fingers danced nimbly across her staff, drawing mana from the air. Behind her of sorcerers and spellslingers mirrored the motion, each acting in unison, following her command. She marshaled their might, channeled it with her will, and directed it downward in a torrent of cold, screaming death. To its credit, the army of the Golden Order did not flinch. The men kept right on marching in lockstep, even as the spells scoured them from the face of the earth. Smoke and dust sprayed outward to obscure their vision, but their torment had only just begun. Shallow water froze and cracked underfoot to birth icy spikes, skewering soldiers in the dozens, hundreds, thousands until she could no longer see them for the sheer haze conjured by so much mana in such a short time. Finally, she held up a hand to end the assault. Hold. At her command, the spells ceased. The smoke cleared. Much to her horror, the army marched right on through, their numbers replenished. A confused murmur went up from her spellcasters. Rennala shared it. How? Her brow furrowed. To have such resolve, had Marika and Radagon come to face her themselves? Had they simply summoned more troops from the ether while her vision was obscured? Had she finally found a proper battle worthy of direct intervention? She braced herself as the invading army drew closer, drawing well within her sight, ready to unleash hell at a moment's notice. Without warning, the army stopped below the castle. Rennala's thoughts fizzed. Who is that? Because they're standing at its head, that was not Marika. Nor was it, for that matter, which was a bit of a shame, because she would have dearly liked to fight him. This she did not know who this was. He marched at the head of a great host, all of whom wore the same face as he. What? Her spies had spoke of some barbarian brute being brought to Lendl, but this did not look like a barbarian at all. He looked young. Fair of face yet strong, proud yet not arrogant. He wore good armor, all black and blue and silver, the latter just like his hair, but none was so bright as his smile nor the gleaming axe he clutched in his hand. Greetings. The surprisingly low tenor of his voice sent a frisson of pleasant surprise racing down her spine as he called for her attention. You must be Lady Rennala. Indeed, she sniffed. I am she. And you are? His smile grew. I've gone by many names. Naruto, Hoara Lu Godfrey will do for now. He had manners how quaint. But it changed not. Well met then, Godfrey. What brings you to my kingdom? Surely not to parley? He smiled silently up at her, the madman. What was he thinking? I have an army. Godfrey peered over his shoulder. As do I. Rennala raised her staff, unamused. Yours cannot reach me. He thumbed his chin, considering her and the distance between them. Maybe not. Godfrey stomped a foot and the army behind him became so much smoke, obscuring her vision once more. Rennala balked and her hesitation sealed her fate, for the Badlands brute came hurtling up out of the smoke at speed. A single leap brought him up to the castle parapet, where he alighted nimbly beside her. His battle-axe found her chin, even as her staff touched his chest. But my axe cane? He said it as though that were the great decider of things, the equalizer. What say you now? Well, he certainly didn't lack for confidences now, did he? Rennala almost laughed as his bravery. Almost. I say you are a fool. A bold fool, but a fool nonetheless. Go back to the Erdtree, servant of the Golden Order. You cannot pass, she brandished her staff his way. You shall not pass. I am not here for the Golden Order, his response brought her up short. I've come here for you. Her face flushed. Wait. Whatever did he mean by that? Surely not. She realized what he intended a heartbeat too late and tried to stop him. Godfrey beat her to the punch. He planted his axe in the ground and thrust a calloused finger at her. I challenge you to single combat. One warrior to another. No one needs to die here. A ripple passed through her forces. She could feel all eyes upon her, waiting for her response. The gall of it all. Do you truly think you can defeat me? Would you rather I massacre your army instead? Rennala blinked. Blinked now in utter disbelief as her army, Liurnia, the very world itself dissolved into a slurry of red death. She looked around and nearly shrieked, such was the sight with which she found herself. So many dead bodies. Countless faces staring at her with their dead fish-like eyes. She looked back to Godfrey and found him covered in blood, holding a severed head in his hand. No, it was her head, eyes wide, mouth gaping in what must have been her final moments of absolute terror and torment. Horror curdled within her, and then it was gone thrice as quickly, leaving her quivering upon one knee. What was that? She nearly retched, only narrowly mastering herself. What did you do? So you can sense killing intent after all that makes things easier? Intent? What was that? A spell? 'Twas no illusion of vision, then? She'd sensed his killing intent and seen what he would do to her forces. Sorry, he rumbled a low laugh as she climbed to her feet. I'm no Itachi, but I can terrify the best of 'em these days. Rennala wiped a hand across her mouth. Who or what was an Itachi, and why did the name fill her with fear? A sweep of his arms sent her sorcerers sprawling across the castle like so many dominoes. Face me, he declared, and I promise I won't harm your people. His words held weight. What kind of queen would she be if she willingly led her men to the slaughter? No queen at all, much less a champion. The way was clear. She must step forward and cast off her fear. She would not be so easily slain, not by him, not by anyone. She was Rennala, queen of the full moon, and she feared no one, certainly not this brute. Very well. She lifted her chin in regal defiance to hide the quiver of her slender shoulders. I accept your terms. Shall we fight to first blood or surrender? He shrugged. The latter. Then I shall name my terms. She thrust her staff at him, glintstone tip agleam with azure light in the night. Once you lose, you and your ilk will never trouble us again. A thought occurred to her and she went with it on a whim. He was attractive enough, certainly. She just had to break his spirit, first. And you shall serve me. Fair. Godfrey granted her a grave nod. And when I win, you'll enter into an alliance with us. When not if... Perhaps she'd been wrong after all. An alliance? She quirked a dark brow at him, baffled. Not subjugation? A slow shake of his head was her reward. I have no desire to lord over the defeated like a tyrant. I would rather have an ally than a slave. Noble of you. But you still won't win. Won't I? He laughed a little, shoulders shaking from mirth. Let's make this interesting. I won't use everything. Those broad arms spread wide, as though to encompass the very world itself. No tricks, no chakra, no magic from me. Only brute force. Was this some sort of joke? You would handicap yourself? But of course, his kingly mien didn't waver, not once. That stern face remained utterly implacable. A crown is warranted with strength. Up came his axe as he hefted it once more, brandishing the might weapon with both hands. I'll prove mine to you, right here, right now, over and over, until you have no choice but to accept defeat. This barbarian was rather well-spoken, wasn't he? He would still kiss her boots. I accept these terms. To whomever yields or dies first, then. He grinned. I've been looking forward to this. I hope you live up to your reputation. Rennala raised her staff and pursed her lips in a grim smile. As do I yours. As a gesture of good faith, I shall allow you the first move. Kind of you. Godfrey took a step forward and... but the moon was lovely tonight. Realization reasserted itself with a vengeance as the wind lashed at her face and gravity dragged her mercilessly downward. She was airborne. She'd only seen him take a single step. A shadow passed over the moon high above her, laughter howling in its wake. Rennala's eyes widened to almost comical proportions. He couldn't be that fast. Surely not. But he was. Godfrey crashed down from on high with a mighty roar, bringing that magnificent battle-axe sweeping in at her head in a vicious slam. She had no choice but to block with her staff. The moment she did, she found herself slammed into the courtyard. Stone burst and dust sprayed, the noise of which muffled her pained gasp. Dark hair ticked the nape of her neck as Rennala righted herself. Belatedly she realized he'd knocked her curved crown clear off her head. "Keep that ridiculous thing off." Godfrey's voice echoed above her. "You look better without it." She glared up at him. "What the devil are you?" "Just a man." He dove down and delivered a vicious crosscut before she could even think to cast a spell. She parried him with her staff, but only just, and instantly regretted her mistake. Her wrist creaked treacherously and she felt a fracture shoot up her wrist. Wincing, she danced backward, slinging spellfire. He surged up after her with frightful speed, a wide grin splitting his handsome face as he struck at her once more. Time and again she darted back, throwing whatever spell she could at him, for all the good it did. He took each bolt without complaint. Nay, if anything her attacks only seemed to embolden him further. "What's wrong?" He laughed not at her but at the world itself, at the blood burning through his veins. "Are you not entertained?" She was most assuredly not. Slapping a hand against the ground, she channeled her mana with a snarl. "Come, oath-sworn dragon." Godfrey didn't hesitate for a moment as the beast's spectral shadow fell over him. Rather than retreat, he simply planted his feet, pivoted now, and a single cleave of his weapon split the WM in half, leaving its severed sides so shimmer away. Rennala leaped through its remains to blast the bold barbarian in the face. His head snapped back, visage singed, but little more. A hand caught her by the wrist and reeled her into a bruising headbutt. "Yes, more," he laughed. "Isn't this fun?" His speech was becoming rougher the longer they fought, more primal. She'd begun to notice that. But now wasn't the time for such things. She swirled free of his grasp and slashed at him, long dark hair whirling around her like fell wings. He countered her and cut through her spell as though it weren't even there. All the while her mind bleated in confusion. What is this? A cut opened across her cheek, narrowly evaded. Why won't he go down? She doubled over as he drove a fist into her stomach. He keeps getting faster, stronger. She wasn't sure how long they fought for, how long their deadly game of cat and mouse continued. She brought every spell she could think to bear, and it was never enough. Yet he couldn't quite catch her long enough to land a finishing blow. The moon fell, the sun rose, only to fall again hours later as the lunar orb reclaimed its heavenly place once more. So the cycle continued. On and on they fought, raging against one another, might against magic, mana against muscles, madness against malevolence. It didn't matter how many wounds he took. Godfrey simply kept coming. Finally the impasse shattered at last. Godfrey mistimed a block, took her spell bolt into his shoulder and barreled through, crashing into her like a falling star. He drove her down by dint of weight and experience, but by some miracle of the moon she managed to smack the axe from his hand as they fell and disarmed him. Errors were made. He didn't even try to retrieve it. The very moment that heaven weapon fell from his grasp, he grabbed her by the waist and drove her back into the ground. It was a classic suplex. Basic wrestling move. Of course, Rennala didn't know that. Her head was still spinning from that last attack, her world all askew. She tried to conjure a spell but everything was and she just couldn't think straight. A hand found her throat and caged it, gentle but firm. Yield. Rennala glared up at him, eyes narrow, bosom heaving for breath that never seemed to come. She was sure she must look quite the sight, and he'd given her such a fright. But she had her pride. "And if I refuse?" For some reason that made him laugh. "You have spirit." His thumb stroked her chin. "I respect that." She glared at him. "You can't win." "I already have." He could have done so many things, then killed her, kissed, kicked her aside. Instead he simply let her go. "I'm not here to kill you." "That was never my intention." Stepping back, he offered her a large hand, smiling softly. "You want to protect your people? Make things better for them. Work with us. Just think of what we might accomplish together, what we might create." And then his smile shattered. "Or we could keep fighting," he scowled at her. "Destroy everything over and over and over, until one of us is dead. Is that really what you want?" It was not. "How can I trust thee? I keep my promises." I'll work with you to the best of my ability. You have my word. Her mind fizzled out again for all the wrong reasons. Work with her? Alongside her? Over her? Top her? Beneath her? Rennala's heart thumped beneath her breast. She'd never had anyone speak to her like this before, nor had she ever lost a duel so spectacularly as this. She did not yet know it, but that was the moment her world changed. Her fingers curled around his. Just like that, her fate irrevocably changed. The lands between would never be the same. Leagues away in Lendl, Marika giggled. Do you see now, brother? She gestured to her crystal ball, and the scene playing out within. Is he not everything I told you he would be? Radagon stomped off with a snarl. Ba let him stop and simmer and sulk. She cared not for his petty tantrums. Instead, she looked back to her crystal ball. Rennala was standing now, holding Godfrey's hand. A wicked little idea tickled the queen's mind just then. Oh, she's rather pretty, isn't she? A crown is warranted with strength. Naruto Godfrey, Hoara Lu. Name thy crown. Hail the conquering hero. Marika met Naruto at the gates of the city and found her grinning like a loon, arms spread wide to welcome him home. The Nodiate Crown Queen looked inordinately pleased with herself as he climbed the stone stairwell to reach her. He supposed she had ample reason to be, given his recent conquest. Could he call it a conquest? He pondered that for a moment as he crested the last of the steps, taking them two at a time in his haste. He'd bested Rennala in single combat and proven himself to the lands between at large, all while holding back the lion's share of his might. Better yet, he'd done it alone through none power but his own. Everyone would speak of his devastating deeds today, and soon, the world would know things had changed, that they would continue to change, under his and Marika's watchful eye. The Golden Order was rising, and it was good to be king. Marika met him on the last step, reaching out for his hand. She really did like touching people. Her fingers lingered on his, caressing his rough knuckles. As though they were made of the finest marble. It would have been so very easy to pull his hand away, but she just looked so damn happy that he couldn't bear to do it. You were triumphant, I trust? Yes, he answered readily. Liurnia is ours. Queen Rennala has agreed to enter into an alliance with us. Marika made happy noises and clapped her free hand over his, rubbing both against her face. There was a strangely sweet smell about her. Perfume, perhaps? But why were her cheeks red? How odd. Wonderful, the buxom blonde beamed up at him, dispelling his concern. I'm sure Rennala will be working quite closely with us in the future. Kurama snorted in the back of his head. Undoubtedly. He frowned at her as much as his old friend. And what do you mean by that? Nothing, she chirped all too quickly, steadfastly avoiding his gaze with a smile. Come, I have a gift for you. Pivoting upon one heel, she trailed a hand across his bice. P then turned and walked back through the gate, leaving him to follow. Bemused by her behavior, he allowed her the indiscretion. And where's Radagon? He could see her face from this angle, but he heard the smile in her voice. I'm certain my dear brother's around here somewhere, probably having a bit of a temper tantrum. The ghost of a smile played over his lips. And why ever would he do such a thing? Don't be coy, a golden eye gleamed over her shoulder as she glanced his way. He expected you to fail, my dear, to falter, just as he had in the past. Instead you returned triumphant. Needless to say he was quite irked by your triumph. She paused briefly, head tilting but a little as she listened to a voice only she seemed to hear. Maliketh says my dear brother may have said some crude things about you. Unfortunately for our dear Radagon. An outraged shriek echoed from one of the distant towers above, punctuated by the sound of breaking furniture and falling rubble. Orin may have overheard him. Was it just his imagination, or was that someone falling in the distance? No, that definitely was. How unfortunate. Should we help him? Meh. Impossibly, her smile grew even more smug. He'll live though he might wish he hadn't. Lesser minds will always fail to comprehend greatness. This way, if you please. I've something to show you. She shrugged one shoulder and kept walking, hips swaying. From there, she ushered him down the hall, flung open the third door she found, and sashayed into an adjacent room filled with treasures. Piles of gold strewn among oaken chests sprawled with shields, gleaming suits of armor, mighty weapons some meters tall, but his gaze was inevitably drawn to a singular pedestal amongst them all. Or rather, the crimson cushion placed atop it that single gilded pillar. There, resting atop its plush Surfacia crown awaited him. That is quite the crown. It certainly was. He'd expected some ghastly gaudy thing, but this was, dare he say, tasteful? A gold circled embossed with silver at the edges, tapering into a singular point leading upward from one's forehead. It was the very height of royalty without being overbearing, just the sort of thing a warrior king might wear. Do you like it? Marika's head popped over his shoulder as he felt her breasts spoon against his back. I had it made for you just last night. You left before I could show you. He blinked slowly and retrieved it with one hand. This is for me? Indeed, the young woman gestured at him eagerly. It's yours. I'll admit, was tempted to fashion you something similar to my mimic veil, but I thought better of it at the last. You don't strike me as the sort for pranks. Oh, how little she knew. Still, the phrasing of her words intrigued him just now. Mimic veil? Her eyes twinkled. Allow a lady some secrets, dear consort. Now then, quick as a flash she was off again, dragging him out the room. This time, Naruto let her take him by the free hand and lead him away. Such an excitable woman Marika was. He almost envied her boundless enthusiasm as much as her energy. Idly, he glanced at the crown still clutched in his palm, the durable metal held firm despite his titanic grasp. It seemed she had a capable smith on hand. Up they went, threading through the halls and passages, mazes and corridors until finally, they reached their destination. Behold! There, beneath the gleaming gold of the fledgling Erd-tree, a throne awaited him. No, he realized 2 thrones. One was smaller than the other and seemingly hewn from the very back of the tree itself, but the other was a massive, mighty thing made of black iron and stone, large as he was tall. If he didn't know better, he'd suspect she'd gotten a hold of his measurements somehow and made it just large enough to fit him. Atop the back, she'd draped a bolt of heavy blue cloth, the better to match his attire. Isn't it glorious? Marika skipped past him, grinning ear to ear. I had the finest masons construct this throne for you. We spared no expense. I'd considered using bones or animal hide, but I felt that might be a little on the nose given your origins. She was babbling but didn't seem to realize it. Do you not approve? I can take it back and have another made. Right, he should probably say something. It's larger than yours. Judging by her half-lidded look, he'd managed to avoid putting his foot in his mouth this time. Of course it is. By contrast, her blink wasn't nearly so innocent as she pretended to be. You're much bigger than I. All right, even he couldn't miss that hint just now, you and your double meanings. I prefer honesty, she glided back to him. Won't you try them on for size? You're not going to let me be until I do, are you? I shall not. With a long-suffering sigh, he lifted the diadem to his head and, well aware of Marika's hazy eyes, donned it ever so carefully. There was no pain. No flesh of spellfire or some sordid curse, nor any backhanded treachery of any sort. It slid seamlessly onto his skull as though it had always been there, always been meant for him, always belonged to him from the very beginning. If anything, he felt stronger now that he'd successfully donned the crown, more awake than he had been before, his body bursting with energy. Lovely, isn't it? Marika crooned at him, causing his gaze to slide her way. I wove several blessings into the metal myself. May they protect so long as I live. His brow furrowed. What manner of blessings? She grinned. Secret. This woman, she would have given Jiraiya himself a run for his money. Really, she was utterly insatiable. And to think they hadn't even done the deed yet. Now for the throne, she stepped aside, gesturing grandly. May you find it to your liking. Remarkably, he did. The black stone held his weight well, and proved far more comfortable than he'd thought it would be. Also enchanted, Marika flounced down atop his legs, all but sitting in his lap. My throne has the same blessing, one to make even the hardest surface seem soft as clay, and the coldest metal warm as a spring afternoon. After all, it would be remiss to sit upon a cold chair all day and night, no? It will serve. He was too humbled by the grand gift to say anything else. We can decorate it with the blades of all our fallen foes. She stroked his cheek with one hand, nuzzling closer. Doesn't that sound nice? It rather did. Humming softly, Marika looped both arms around his neck and laid her head against his chest. He expected her to bound up at any moment and haul him off somewhere else. But no, she kept still clinging to him, swaying a little as she snuggled in his lap. A minute passed. Then another. Another. My dear consort, a tiny hiccup escaped her at last. None shall stand before us. He caught that faint, sweet scent on her breath again. His eyes widened. Realization dawned. Marika's flushed face. The sweet smell that followed her. Her hands, lingering on him every chance they got. You're drunk. Not. One could barely hear the slur in her voice as she pressed her head into his neck. You won. I had reason to celebrate. And besides, you took so long to get back. He stared down at her until at long last she raised her head to look him in the eye. So I started drinking early. She granted him a gormless grin. Would you like some? There's plenty of wine in the cellars. Or would you prefer ale? One hand fiddled with the strap of her dress. Perhaps something else would be to your liking? Clever, sneaky girl. He knew exactly what she was trying to do. Right, that settled it. You needn't embolden yourself with drink. We'll settle this when you're sober. Rising from the throne, he picked her up, cradling her against his chest. Drunk or no, she noticed that. Her eyes lit up. Princess Carrie. Naruto sighed and carried her off to bed. His tribe finally arrived the very next day. Countless warriors from the Badlands come to the capital. But so too came the dragons, and their wrath was great. War came to their doorstep. A crown was warranted with strength. Godfrey would soon show his. Fear he who fears nothing. Leave he who has reasons left to live. Dread he who has people to protect, family he can't neglect. Name thy conquest. Conquest waited for no man, not even an Elden lord. Once the dawn came, Naruto Godfrey was quick to greet it. After a brisk breakfast of bread and cheese and a brisk wash besides, he donned his armor and went to work. His keen gaze scrutinizing the round table with its many maps, giving each one its due consideration before dismissing each in turn. All the while, mentally planning for his next battle. Where, however, he had yet to decide. Liurnia was well in hand. Rennala was actually quite nice once one got to know her. Really, no matter how his tribe and Marika's tree sentinels might turn their noses up at their new allies, the sorcerers would be a boon to their ranks. Marika insisted he write letters to Rennala as well, and not seeing the harm, he'd already sent the first of such at first light. He didn't see the harm in keeping correspondence between the two of them, and besides, it would be nice to have someone to which he could mention his woes. Strange that Marika kept giggling whenever he mentioned Rennala. Did she know something he didn't? Such a strange woman. But even with their newfound alliance, Lendl remained vulnerable, beset by enemies from within and without. Setting the matter of the Crucible aside for now, he really needed to train up his own band of warriors and make proper knights of them. Was still the matter of the dragons, the fire giants, and of course this so-called Storm Lord down in Stormvale that everyone was on about. Not to mention whispers of this so-called Glowmide queen that nobody had seen. Then there were mysterious knocks, the latter of whom had apparently sent an envoy to the castle while he was away battling Rennala. Thankfully, she was presently sound asleep and would be for quite some time. Their people were nocturnal, it appeared. He was expected to entreat with her later this evening. But until then, so many fights on so many fronts. Decisions, and decisions more. He was, quite literally, spoiled for choice. I say we take the dragons next. Naruto rolled his eyes and ran a hand through his hair. You would, Kurama? What can I say? We foxes are far and away superior to those winged lizards. It'll be fun tearing off their scales. Right, he scoffed anew. I'd rather speak with them before we start suplexing people, thank you very much. To whom are you talking, dear consort? The softest of yawns at his back set his blood racing suddenly, or perhaps that might be the pair of slim arms that encircled his waist. Well, they made a valiant attempt at it too. He really was quite tall. Several somethings warm and soft pressed into him, and despite his best efforts to focus, he found himself standing just a little straighter in more ways than one. A hard worker thou art. Marika crooned into his right side. A most admirable trait. He grunted, unable to completely restrain his smile. Did you sleep well? She leaned into him. I have the most abominable headache. I'm sure you do. You were drunk. It's called a hangover. Marika paused. It is? I can hardly remember last night. He chuckled. Really, it wasn't his fault. He couldn't help himself. The queen's pale face went red. Oh gods! What did I do? Naruto looked away and whistled ever so innocently. She grabbed at his arm. Godfrey, tell me. You may have demanded I carry you to bed. Her thoughts fizzled out. He saw it in her blank expression. She buried her face in her hands with a whine. Kill me, dear consort. Kill me now. Make it quick. I think not. Marika made angry Marika noises and he absently reached around with one hand, patting her head as she refused to look at him. She really was quite enjoyable to be around when she let her walls down. He couldn't see why so many were terrified of her. If nothing else, he wouldn't let her become the monster so many thought she was. And speaking of monsters, I don't suppose you saw Orin on the way up here? The Queen Tobe looked up from her palms, thankful for the save and eager to change the subject. Why, yes I did. Naruto noted the most notable absence of the stab-happy girl. And where is she? Her grin grew. She challenged me to a fight. Now it was his turn to groan. Why? She thought I was weak and foolish, easily bested, like Radagon. He looked away with a rueful smile. Of course she did. And where is she now? Marika slapped a fist into an empty palm. Planted her like a turnip tree in the yard. What was she on about? Turnips don't grow on trees. Her brow furrowed. Do they not? They definitely don't. Was she pulling his leg? No, surely not. She really didn't know. Wow, he almost pitied her for a moment. You really are sheltered. How do you expect to run a kingdom when you don't even know how crops grow? Enough talk of the harvest. She looked him up and down. If it is battle you speak of, I would not be remiss to spar with thee. Exasperated, he finally looked away from his maps to face her fully. And what manner of spar would that be? She licked her lips lasciviously, but he could tell her heart wasn't in it. Not yet. Nice try. Perhaps later. She leaned past him, made curious by his intent. Where shall we strike next? A silvery brow rose. But of course, my dear consort. Marika's grin grew impish. Didst thou think I would let thee have all the fun? You have more than proven yourself over Radagon's objections. Let him stew in the infirmary a while and lick his wounds. There's battle to be done. He felt the subtle thread of her voice push against him, trying to urge him on. He frowned at it and batted her hand away from his bicep. Stop that. You know that charm doesn't work on me. Speak plainly. Boo. I was just having a bit of fun. Her voice fell back to that rough yet slightly regal drawl he'd grown comfortable with. But mine point remains. Where shall the hammer fall? Naruto glanced back to the map and gave it a good long look. On a whim, he snatched up nearby knife and... Here. He drove a knife down into the parchment at a given point. Marika saw whom he'd chosen, squealed happily, leaped up and flung her arms around his neck. This is the beginning of a beautiful relationship. He chuckled ruefully. If you say so. I do say so. Oh, she perked up suddenly and dipped a hand into the satchel hanging from her waist. I nearly forgot before he could think to ask what she was on about. She withdrew a red gold vial and offered it to him. Here my gift to you. He accepted it and sniffed once, frowning at the curiously sweet scent within. What's this then? Sap from the Erd tree. She beamed. A potent concoction that can heal any wound. I thought it would make a fine housewarming gift. Housewarming, she said. Clever girl. He knew she was up to something, he just didn't know what. It will do. He tucked the vial into his belt stiffly, secretly disappointed. Oh my, Marika batted her long lashes at him, hand flitting up to her mouth to conceal a laugh. Were you expecting something else? How bold. He twitched at her teasing. Wicked woman. She winked. Marvelous man. He was playing hard to get. Marika rather liked that. This game of theirs, it let her focus on other things than the matter at hand. He wasn't aware of the realm of shadows yet, but he'd unwittingly chosen a battlefield quite close to it. How incredibly vexing. It was all she could to smile and wink and flirt, but every word tasted like so much ash in her mouth. Mustn't tell him about Messer or the shadow of the Erd tree. Trust was a fragile thing and their bond was young. Such a revelation might well break it. Mesmer wasn't a mistake. She would never think of her poor, dear boy as such, but that first dalliance with Radagon so long ago, before they first came to these lands, that had very much been one. At the end of the day, Mesmer had done his duty and helped her ascent to godhood. And how so she repaid him? With terrible treachery, the blackest of betrayals. She was afraid of her own child. Not just him, but his power and hatred, so much hate for those who held not the grace of gold. She'd nurtured such emotions in him, fostered them, never once thinking of the future, only the present, only her promised godhood. And once she had it, what had she done to remedy her mistake hence? Nothing. No, less than nothing. When the serpent within her son revealed itself, she had overreacted. She'd panicked, plucked out his eye, placed a seal of grace in its wake, and left him the shadows to rot, banished him to a realm of darkness with so many others besides. Should her dear Godfrey ever get even a whiff of Thisno? He must never know. Not here, not now, not today. Perhaps not ever. She would be better other future children. Mesmer would come in time and they could be made to meet and… Marika? Wait. She made a soft squeak, belatedly remembering where she was. What? I didn't do anything? Godfrey's brow crinkled in thinly veiled mirth. I didn't know you could make such a sound. Shall we be off then? We've an army to command. We shall… Great, he smirked her way. There's just something I need to check on, first. But of course, she waved him on half-heartedly. You're free to do as you see fit. We will join you shortly. Ah, the royal we, he laughed and drew her into a brief crushing hug that left her heart alf-utter before releasing her. I'll meet you downstairs in the courtyard, then. Indeed. She forced herself to smile for him, to nod and hide her concern, her fears, her regrets. I wish you good fortune in the war to come. He laughed at that for some reason, then let her be. Only once she was certain he'd gone did she dare to slump against the map table, bury her head in the parchment, and heave the heaviest of sighs. Fucketh my lethe thief. Why couldn't things be simple with him? Why did she want him so badly? Why couldn't she get him off her mind? She must be calm. Godfrey did not know. He didn't. He couldn't. He wouldn't until she was ready to tell him. She would not make the same mistakes twice. She had a new lease on life now. Her first fiery crusade was ended. With a true consort of her own, she had a chance to usurp that foul sea slug and the greater will with it. All would be well. She would make it so. With her hammer, if she must. A shadow stopped at the bast of the stairs. He sensed it long before he saw Hm. Hold, consort of Marika? ? Naruto craned his neck down and found an armored warrior in jet black barring his path, preventing him from descending further to the courtyard below. They were large, toweringly tall, near of a height with him. His first instinct was to brush the interloper aside. His second said that would be a grave mistake, and the third gibbered at him to turn around and run. Even then, it took him a moment to realize why said instincts were howling at him. They'd never met before, but by his dark armor, bestial visage and black blade, he knew him. You must be Maliketh. I am indeed. Marika's shadow, the first of many, rumbled deeply, his voice akin to that of a giant boulder tearing its way down the mountainside. And you are Hoera Lu. He smiled thinly at the intentional slight. I prefer Godfrey these days. Her shadow snorted. 'Tis all one and the same to me, boy. They considered one another in stoic silence for a moment, two titans, neither willing to move. Maliketh broke the silence first. I understand you conquered Lucaria. I did. He looked him up and down, idly noting the bandages on his face. You're still wounded? I am well enough. He gave his concern all the attention it was due, which was to say none at all. We must speak. Aren't we doing that now? With an annoyed sigh, the old warrior grunted and stalked away into the courtyard, forcing him to follow if only for a moment. Their journey was admittedly brief. Maliketh paused before a water fountain, idly watching it burble softly. I have raised that girl since she was but a pup. His dark eyes stared down into the water's surface below. From the moment the Greater Will chose her, I watched over her. 'Twas I who first taught her to walk, to talk, to stalk her prey. In many ways, I am the father she never had, though I doubt she remembers me as such. Naruto held his tongue. Warrior he might be, but he wasn't rude. The old dog was clearly going somewhere with this. Take other women to bed if that is what Marika wishes of thee, father more children than the stars themselves, I care not. However, with frightful speed he whirled and thrust his muzzle at him, lips peeling back to reveal wickedly sharp fangs. You will be good to her. Do I make myself clear? Kurama came howling back to life in his head. He dares threaten us? I'll devour him. Only a supreme effort of will kept him from laughing outright. But let me eat him. Kurama? No. Kurama yef. In desperate attempt to prevent such an unpleasant outcome, he let his gaze stray to the hound's black blade. That's an impressive weapon. Marika's shadow drew himself up with more than a little pride. This is no mere blade. It is destined death itself. Is it now? That would explain the ominous whispers currently screaming at his soul. You might actually be able to hut me with that. Maliketh rumbled a warning. Break my daughter's heart and I shall do much more than merely harm thee. The old wolf was being protective. How adorable. Downright quaint really. But in the same vein he wasn't about to let himself be pushed. Is that so? He drew himself up to his full towering height and looked the champion in the eye. Luckily for you, I have no intention of wounding her in any way. Maliketh snarled outright in his face, trying to rattle him. When he didn't waver, he reluctantly relented and drew back. I believe you for now, Elden Lord. For the good of the Golden Order. But beware. Misstep and you shall taste my blade. He sketched a bow. I'd be honored to spar with you. That is not what I meant and you know it, fool. Shall we make a game of it, then? Marika materialized behind them, lifting a mimic veil from her head. Her grin said it all. Naruto frowned her way nevertheless. How long have you been there? Long enough, she chirped happily. I couldn't help but listen in. Maliketh heaved a weary sigh. Marika, what are you doing there? I could say the same of thee, Maliketh. She turned a fearsome glower upon him. Threatening my king consort are we? To his credit the old hound didn't back down. I was merely teaching him proper manners. Is that what they call it these days? Well, if you two can't get along, I've just the thing. She brought both her hands together in a resounding clap, beaming all the while. A duel the two of you shall battle before our troops. With all of Lendl in attendance it will surely raise morale. Maliketh whipped around so fast that Naruto physically heard his neck creak. I beg you pardon? You are forgiven, she sang over her shadow's resultant exclamation and looked back to Naruto, practically bouncing on his feet. If my lord fails, he shall remain pure as the driven snow with me and me alone, since it seems that is what you desire. Naruto scoffed to that effect. I'm hardly pure. But when he wins, and by log, he didn't miss the way she shivered as she said that, the absolute lech, he gets to do as he pleases, with whom he pleases, where he pleases, with my full permission. Heat spiked up the back of his neck and roared into his face, setting it alight in a rare flush. Ha! Maliketh's protest proved more vocal. You would have him father that many children? Marika smiled. It was not a nice smile. The Golden Order requires heirs. And besides, I wish to be a proper mother. The more the merrier, I say. There was something in the way she said that last bit. Had she mothered children before already? No, surely not. Despite that, her stoic shadow tried to rally one last time. Do not be foolish, pup. There is no need to. Naruto saw his weakness and pounced on with a smug smirk. I accept these terms. Marika crooned, darkly delighted by his agreement. Sensational. Maliketh did not. Fool of a boy, the shadow snapped at him. I cannot restrain myself with this black blade of mine, you will die. Good, he sneered. If you think you can rip my life away from me that easily? He beckoned at him with a shy-teating grin. Come and take it. Harem Azula trembled. Placidusax felt the coming storm in his aging bones, a dull ache deep in his scales that resonated with the Dragon Lord's very soul. Perhaps it was a portent of things to come. Perhaps not. He'd always been sensitive to such things even as a young hatchling, long before he ascended. Raising a weathered claw, he conjured a crackling portal of red lightning and gazed through it. The ancient spell hearkened to his will and reflected his desire to see the comings and goings of Lendl from afar. Curious, this new consort of Marika's. Most curious indeed. Few would dare challenge Maliketh himself. Interesting, his very voice conjured a bolt of crimson lightning through the dark clouds above. Ah, to be young and full of vigor again, how he envied the youth these days. He was old, yes, wounded, but strong, and that strength had made him cautious, much like himself. Bel may have maimed him, but his fellow dragon had not emerged unscathed. 'Twas the black dragon who had fled to the realm of shadows after their battle, not he. Victory was his. In time he would recover. The traitor would not. Still, it was a shame. Treachery was not the nature of dragons. They were endless, eternal, immortal, unable to fall to anything beyond battle. Yes, there was the occasional conflict among them, but such were settled in combat, not through base treachery and backstabbing. Bel had proven him wrong. Proven them all wrong. Nearly ruined them, he had. Even now the great gasping wound in his chest burned horribly at the memory of that day. He'd suffered a grievous blow, but he'd taken the usurper's left leg and both wings besides before he fled. He and his foul drakes would be hunted forevermore now. And in time, Bel the Dread would be dragged back to Farum Azula to face justice. Oh yes, he knew well the promise of patience. Not so Lanciex. They are distracted. He looked down, mildly nonplussed to find the younger dragon near his tail gazing raptly upon the portal he had conjured, her eyes bright with hunger for battle. We must strike. Arrogant, bold Cress. Such bountiful emotions gave her strength, but they would be the end of her one day, he knew it. Perhaps that day would come sooner than she thought, very soon indeed. You are young, he deigned to tap her scaled head with a claw, cowing her and forcing her to assume human form as a warning. You know not the power of Marika and her ilk. I'm not a child, alas. The reprieve proved most brief. Even in this state, little Lanciax still possessed the fire and fury of 10 of her kin. I'm hundreds of years old. And I, thousands if not millennia, he chided her sternly. Listen to your elders, hatchling. Fetch Fortisax and Grandsax. I would speak with them. Her golden eyes lit up. Will it be war, then? I gave you a task, child. Why are you still here? Tend to it. Now, she looked like she might protest, but a look from her made her scarper. His peace once more achieved, Placiusax looked back to the portal and the warrior within. A wry smirk tugged at his scarred, scaled face. At last, a worthy opponent, our battle will be legendary. Away in Raya Lucaria, other legends had taken a somewhat different view upon the new Elden Lord. Rennala clutched a letter tight to her bosom, eyes wide. Why was her face so blasted warm? No, she already knew the answer in her heart of hearts. That thrice damnable Godfrey. He'd done this to her. This was all his fault. Every bloody bit of it. Bad enough that he'd bested her on the battlefield and made her feel things, but now this? No warrior should have such a way with words. What was she to think after this? He was just so-so. But Aarg, the queen of the full moon, buried her head into a nearby pillow and screamed herself hoarse. Because you see, Rennala already knew the cause of this mysterious malady. Godfrey had captured her heart. Let us commence. Name thy bout. It wasn't every day a man got to fight destined death. Truth be told, Naruto found himself rather looking forward to his bout with Maliketh and his black blade. The festivities that precede said bout. Somewhat less so. More than half of Lendl had turned out before the city square on this fine evening, the Elden throne lacking both the means and method to seat so many eager souls to see this grand little spectacle, from the lowest craftsman to the greatest of Erdtree sentinels. Everyone expected a show, a dance, not some one-sided beating. He was almost tempted to give them the latter, if only to disabuse them of the notion. He could hear Oren practically drooling on the sidelines, hoping he'd do just that. Fights were rarely a spectacle back in the Badlands, and they were certainly not a dance. A duel was a duel, and often to the death at that, a war in which only the strongest could survive. In the tribe, leadership and a crown was warranted with strength and strength alone. There was none of this preening and pomposity. Then again, things had always been simpler when he styled himself as Hoara Lu. Axes and anger. Blood on bone. Strength and speed. Try telling that to Marika. She did so love her showmanship. Even now Queen Tobe approached the stage with arms raised, hammer held high in her right hand. Performing a little spin, she let her dark dress flare out at her ankles, to which the crowd roared and began to stamp their feet. She loved the attention. He could tell. She basked in it like the rays of gold from their fledgling Erd tree. Shen she turned and flicked a saucy wink his way, the gladdened throng screamed her name. He rolled an eye and went with the act, remaining still as stone where he stood, hands perched on the haft of his axe. Good evening, lords and ladies of Lendl. Her voice resonated amongst the small folk, pitched perfectly to reach those both above and below. She hollered into her dread hammer as though it were some manner of mad microphone. We are tonight's entertainment, and are you not entertained? A series of hoots and catcalls went up from some of the ruder, rowdier folk. An eyebrow twitched. That was his woman they were making eyes at. He stomped a foot down and the world shook. All those jeers died an ugly death. Tonight Marika took it in stride. Blast her, great Godfrey, first Elden Lord, shall face he who bears the black blade, wielder of destined death itself, my shadow Maliketh. Silence choked the cheers in their throats, and even Naruto winced a little despite himself. For if Marika was loved and cherished by her people, then Maliketh was feared by them. As well he should be. One touch of his sword meant death for the lesser folk, even in this brave new era. Such a sword could harm even him, and the queen's shadow knew it too. Bloody bastard even took his sweet time lumbering up into the ring. He wasn't fooled for a moment. The queen's shadow was nearly fully healed. He would be quick as his namesake, quicker still perhaps. But it seemed the queen's shadow could play to the crowd as well. While he looked on, the armored wolf raised his blade into the air and threw his head back with a mighty cry. They ate it up, lords and peasants alike. Irked, he slammed his down, only for them to cheer for him in return. What vexes thee? Marika looked his way with a grin, voice momentarily muffled by the sheer din of the audience. Art thou not amused, my dear consort eternal? He glowered at her. Is this what you call entertainment? She leaned into him, lowering her voice for his sake. They seem themselves in you. You are a champion unto them, a common man selected as Elden Lord. How can they not cheer? He blinked upon her, baffled and balked by what was clearly less than a half-truth. I am no mere man. You of all people know that. Her hip brushed his in passing. We both know, but they don't. Let the people have a little hope. Give them a show. A show, she said. Bah, as though he were some prize stallion to be carpered about. You were the one who set up this match in the first place. I did, she grinned up at him, and I know you're looking forward to it. The fight this spectacle, no. She dragged her nails down his chest seductively. Then best him swiftly. Do so, and I shall reward thee most handsomely. Be a dear and get their attention, won't you? He raised his right hand, he flooded it with Kurama's chakra and conjured a tailed beast ball to his palm. From there, he fired it up into the air like a pseudo-firework. The explosion that followed rattled the city to its very roots. Better yet, it drew Maliketh's attention. The old wolf didn't look quite so cocky anymore. The people ate it up, crooning happily at his spell, thinking it for show. Not so Marika. The young queen turned gleaming eyes upon him, her smile shining like the Elden stars. Could you always do that? Here at last, he couldn't help but preen a little. Would you believe me if I said yes? What shall it be? Marika pushed off his chest and flung up her arms, to the adulation of all. To first blood or yield? The crowd stomped their feet, the word of one soon taken up as a cry by the many. Yield, yield, yield. Kurama huffed in his head, and he agreed with him. She knew how to work a crowd. So shall it be. His fiancée stepped away, preening like a proud peacock. Carve their fight into your hearts, sear it into your souls, behold. So speaking, she flung up her hammer into the air and stepped back, letting her weapon arc into the sky. When the hammer strikes the ground, the match begins. To the victor goes the spoils. Maliketh tensed opposite him. This will be over in a moment, Godfrey. He cracked a grin. Promises, promises. Down came the hammer, landing squarely between the two of them with a thunderous crash. Maliketh lunged forward and bounded over without nary a sound, silent as death itself. A pity. He would have enjoyed a bit more pre-fight banter before they began the bout. Out came his axe, arcing upward to meet him in a broad one-handed sweep. A sonorous sound filled Landel as their weapons collided, sparked, interlocked against one another. Maliketh realized his mistake a moment later. He grinned, braved his axe with both hands and pushed him down, driving him to a knee, then another with naught but the black blade between them. From there, he pressed his advantage with gusto, forcing the old wolf to hold on for dear life, lest he be overcome. Put on a show, Marika said. He could ham it up with the best of them when he wanted. He forced his smile into a sneer and pitched his voice to carry, not just to the startled shadow pinned beneath him, but the howling audience baying for blood. Is this all you can muster, Maliketh? Destined death glowed an ominous shade of red on black, burning with baleful light. It was his only warning. ? Instinct overpowered the need for a quick victory, and he kicked backward out with his right foot, driving a boot into Maliketh's armored knee to bring him low while simultaneously flinging himself away from the torrent of slashes that filleted the space he'd stood. Credit where it was due, Maliketh recovered quickly, grabbed a nearby pillar, and vaulted forward, howling down at his head. Sparks flew as he parried the black blade with his axe and slashed upward, forcing the shadow into a clumsy tumble past him or risk lose an arm. A savage grin split his face. The opening was too good to ignore. You are unwise to lower your defenses. Axes weren't made for jabbing. Not thrusting, nor riposts. No, at the end of the day, they were made for swings, smashes and slashes. They were a weapon of strength. And he, pardon the pun, moved with grace. Armor shrieked and spat sparks as his axe came crashing down onto Maliketh's back. Caught unawares, the half-wolf slammed face-first into the courtyard, banging his head within his helm. It likely saved his life, but he'd have a terrible headache come morning. He didn't bleed visibly, but his armor dented inward, heralding a great deal of pain as the mangled metal jutted against his ribs. He could have finished him there, could have delivered the coup de grace and split him in half with a second strike while he laid there prone. But he didn't. The shadow, however, irritating he'd been, was not an enemy. And so he let him rise. He didn't miss the flash of approval from Marika. But he hoped she appreciated this. You move well, Maliketh rumbled, stumbling to his feet. For a brute. This brute is about to stomp you into the ground, wolf. They closed upon one another. Axe met blade, weapons crossed, tangled, and sprang apart. In short order, their bout became a storm of blows, a deadly devastating dirge, replete with stomps and kicks, flips and whirls. Maneuvers that left the audience all but howling for more. Even with his wounds, the black blade of Marika proved himself dangerously nimble. In such a limited setting as this, with his blood up, it was only a matter of time before he got the better of him. Sure enough he did, performing a sudden moulinette, pivoting to slap his axe aside and bring the black blade across his chest in a vicious twist. The answer was simple, the solution obvious: he mustn't let that blade touch him. And so he flooded his skin with subtle chakra, burning gold. Imagine his surprise when Maliketh cut right through it and his armor alike. Kurama yowled in agony. For once, he shared it. Pain he'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Naruto stepped back with a startled bark of laughter, cradling one hand against his chest, mildly surprised to find himself bleeding. He wasn't used to seeing this much of his own blood anymore. He feigned weak knees and dropped to a knee, leaning heavily against his axe. Sure enough, Maliketh struck again, forcing him to twist his head aside lest the lose an eye. Another thin slice opened across his cheek, dark as night and thrice as painful. Blast, but those wounds stung. The crowd went silent and dimly, He became aware of Marika's arm raised in the background with a shout. First blood to Maliketh. Yield. Said Shadow dropped to all fours with a growl, leaning upon his bloody weapon. The next strike will end your life. Oh, how those words stung. He had no one to blame but himself for holding back. Underestimating me, are we? He raised his gaze. Is that what you think? Grinning, he flexed his chest muscles and the wound closed. The queen's shadow bridled, utterly incredulous. Impossible. He titled his head as he finished regenerating. You really have no idea what's possible. Maybe he was playing it up a little, but this was just so much effing careful. He was supposed to be Godfrey now, couldn't let Hoera Lu come out to play. If he truly gave into his lust for battle, nothing would survive, but here and now, unleashing the beast within might prove dangerous for the old wolf. Screw it. Grinning, he cast his axe aside and absolutely ripped the ruined armor from his chest. Oren squawked in dismay while Marika whistled wolfishly in the background. He ignored their remarks, stood, and towered over Maliketh. I've given thee courtesy enough. So speaking, he flung the remains of his vestments at him. When the hound slashed at it, he came barreling through the remains, grabbed him by the throat, and slammed him against a pillar. Twice. Thrice. On the fourth the pillar shattered, crumbling down around him. He blinked the dust from his eyes and destined death lashed out at once, lopping his hand off at the wrist. Chiding himself for the slip, he pivoted as the hound danced away, took a brisk step forward in pursuit and stomp. The sudden shockwave that followed left old Maliketh off balance, only for a moment. It was enough, no, more than enough to regrow his lost limb. He stepped in and swung for the fences. Truly, he would never forget the telltale sensation of a jaw buckling beneath his fist. Sage knew he'd done this countless times back in the tribe. And now? Maliketh went sprawling. Thud. Naruto gave for all his bark. The old dog didn't dare face him in a head-on collision, if he could help it, which was wise of him, frankly. He favored glancing blows, sweeping strikes, darting in and out before he could bring his full strength to bear. Death by 1,000 cuts, whittling him down through sheer attrition. It was a sound strategy. Really it was. Except, Naruto didn't care about strategy right now. He grinned and stepped in without fear, letting the black blade brush his beard, bringing the cold chill of death with it. Undaunted, he reached out, seized Maliketh by the upper wrist and squeezed, grinding the nerves of his wrists tightly together. Destined death fell from his hands, and he seized it instantly, kicking back to freedom with his new prize. It was heavy. Unnormally so. The blade recoiled, refused, rejected him outright, howling indignantly. Release me, let me go, let me go, let me go. So the rune of death was alive and well in his blade. So much for a new toy. He would have liked to wield it no matter. Hefting the deathly blade, he spun and launched it at Maliketh like a javelin. The old wolf yelped and flung himself out of harm's way as the blade skewered the space he'd been standing. Curious. Was he not immune to his own weapon? Thoughts for latter he supposed. Right now he wanted to smash his face in. He was still pondering just how to do that when the black wolf went on the attack again. The black blade was powerful, downright deadly, but for all his speed, he needed a moment to bring it around. For a warrior, a second in battle was the difference between life and death. In the time it took the black blade to recover, their bout came to an end. Destined death came howling in at his chest, to which he shunted it off an armored bracer, reached in, grabbed Maliketh by the waist and, with a cackle, he threw his body backwards and planted the queen's shadow in the ground as one might a turnip. Marika howled her approval. Did he just suplex him? Was that what they called it these days? Dauntless, he reached down and griped Maliketh by the scruff of the neck. Yield, he threw the wolf's words back at him with a sneer. Or I crush your throat? Never, the old wolf wore a pained grimace as he clawed at him. I am not beaten yet, you arrogant barbarianac? He squeezed his windpipe, rendering his words a wheeze. You wouldn't? A baleful grin put paid to his words. Wouldn't what? The crowd had gone deathly silent around them, but he didn't care. Why shouldn't he end this? The strong thrived, the weak died. Maliketh's defeat was proof enough of his weakness. Therefore he should just perish like the rest. Perish, die and be dead just like Radagon should be. That's enough. Marika's voice cut through the haze of bloodlust. Godfrey is the victor. Sense swam back into focus, bringing reality with it. He blinked once. Oi, brat. Kurama's voice was tense. You won. Let him go. Reluctantly, he did as his old friend bade. Maliketh snarled. I can still. Marika smacked her shadow upside the helmet, drawing a dog-like yelp from him. If this continues, the two of you will surely kill one another. I've no use for a disobedient shadow, nor a brute who knows no restraint. She turned a brief, baleful gaze upon them with pointed intent and crossed both arms before her bountiful bosom. Thankfully, it seems the two of you are neither. You heard her. Seems I'll have to help you watch that temper of yours. On that at least, he and Kurama agreed. It was the first time he'd nearly lost control in ages. How unseemly. Suitably chastised, Naruto turned to face the crowd. They hooted, their faith him restored. Marika sashayed his way, hips swaying, and he drew her into his arms. She laid a hand on his chest and those cries redoubled. There was one thing they loved more than a show, it was romance. There you have it. She raised a fist for the crowd, many of whom were even now chanting their names. People of Lendl, you have your champion now. Feast and make merry tonight. Thine meal shall be provided at the expense of the crowd. He quirked a brow at her. What? She huffed and leaned into them. Let the small folk fill their bellies tonight. They deserve it. Every day cannot be a battle. We will have those aplenty soon enough. And children, I suspect, she muttered under her breath, turning her head aside. Gods, you could grind meat on those abs. Right? His upper torso was still bare, wasn't it? Still, he hadn't quite heard what she said just now. What was that? Nothing, she chirped with faux innocence. Come, let us leave Maliketh to his rest. We shall have a celebration of our own. He rather liked the sound of that. Radagon met the two of them upon the stairs leading upward, wearing a face like thunder. Marika brushed past him without so much as a passing glance. Would that he were so lucky on that front. Do not rest on your laurels for long, aspiring Elden Lord, he growled under his breath, shouldering him aside. I shall show you up yet? A lifetime ago Naruto would have risen to his bait, all angry spit and condemnation. As great Godfrey he merely blinked once. Do you crave my approval that much, Lord Radagon? The man sputtered furiously. You will see. Is that so? He scoffed, unimpressed. I have seen nothing but failure from you so far. Run along, little mouse. The champion tensed, and for a moment he wondered if they would come to blows. His blood was still up after the Maliketh fight, the warrior within not so easily silenced. He wasn't above divesting him of an arm to teach him a lesson or two. Surely he'd grow it back. Alas, it was not to be. Do get that stick out your ass, brother mine. Marika materialized between the two of them and separated them with a smile. It's hardly becoming. As is your wanton lust over this man, came the immediately bitter rejoinder. It sickens me how you shame yourself over him. It's called marriage, Radagon, she sighed. Perhaps you should try it sometime. Having a permer soothes the soul. Her brother bridled. Never, I shall not subscribe to such weakness. Have it your own way then. Radagon stalked off. Marika tooted after the rambunctious redhead. You shouldn't goad him. He has his pride. Does he now? But of course. She made a show of inspecting her fingernails. He is a part of me after all. But enough of your word games. Come, she grabbed him by the wrist and he let her, allowing her to tug him up the stairs once more. Tonight we shall make merry, but tomorrow we have an army to prepare and a conquest to assemble. Naruto frowned. Isn't it the other way around? Semantics, she flounced ahead of him with a pout. Keep talking like that and you'll be sleeping on the couch? Surely she was having him on there. We sleep in separate beds, Marika. She huffed, looking more human than ever before. That changes tonight. I can hardly let that sorceress steal a march on me when I'm not looking now, can I? Your firstborn shall be with me, not her. The byplay soared right over his head, to which he squinted. Why are we talking about Rennala and firstborns? She refused to elaborate and began playing with her braid instead. Why indeed? Such a wild, boisterous girl. He couldn't tell if she was putting an act on for him or he lumbered after her with a roll of the eyes. As you command, my queen. Indeed I am, she tossed her head, slapping his chest with her golden braid. And do not forget it. He caught her wrist before she could retreat, and spun her into his chest. She balked and gazed up at him boldly. Why are you looking at me like that? Honesty was the best policy with someone like her. My blood is still up. Is it now? Her gaze became lidded. Shall I grant you succor? Cheeky minx. She was being coy. Cute, but he always preferred the direct method back in the tribe. Rather than retort, he swept her off her feet and up into his arms. Marika spluttered in unexpected delight, throwing both arms around his neck to hold on for dear life. Eyes wide and cheeks flushed, she gazed upon him in disbelief. Godfrey? He placed a chaste kiss upon her forehead, causing her to sputter as she hadn't in an age. Unfair, she whined at him, kicking her legs in the air to no avail. You can't just sweep me off my feet like that. 'Tis I who do the swooping and the sweeping, not you. He laughed and bounded toward their bedchamber, carrying her in his arms. Their future was looking bright. Rennala's future was looking grim. For you see, her dear sister had written to her again. In truth, she didn't rightly know how Rennala was getting messages here to the realm of shadows, but she couldn't fault her big sister for her persistence. Less so the contents of her letters. A barbarian had bested her? Her dear older sister? Just thinking of it left her furious. No doubt he sought to strip her maidenhood from her, among other things. This would not stand. No one could harm Rennala, she would have her vengeance upon him. Surely Mesmer wouldn't miss her for a few weeks. But who was she kidding? Marika's broody offspring wouldn't know she was gone. She doubted he would care. He hadn't given her the time of day in ages. They hardly spoke to one another anymore. Surely he would notice if she slipped out. And even if he did, what? It wasn't as though he could stop her. He didn't care. Not for anyone or anything these days, such was his despair. There were ways to slip out of the shadows for a time, though they often proved costly. She was not bound by a curse, such as he was, but it would take an effort to break free of this place, her very utmost. Nay, and no matter, she had a barbarian to trounce, and her sister's honor to avenge no cost was too great. In hindsight, the foolish little sister Shaudi stayed away, but because she didn't, the lands between changed anew. There are more dangerous things in this world than one's tooth and claw, than fang and scale. Just as the pen is mightier than the sword, so too should one fear the silver tongue. But hey, this is what you asked for. That's right. This is exactly what you asked for. Heavy is the crown. Name thy champion. War had come to Lendl. Crimson lightning crisscrossed the bleak skies above the capital, great bolts of death leaping from darkened cloud to cloud as Naruto looked on, promising a battle to be remembered. And there in the distance, were one to squint, they could see a great many winged shapes flitting about the heavens, hear the cries of countless creatures crying out in unison. He felt his pulse quicken at both the sights and the sounds, his fingers twitching toward the scarred haft of his mighty axe. After so long, the battle with the dragons was finally nigh. It would prove the first of many, and it would be glorious. Or so he'd thought at first. Instead of attacking outright as was their wont, the winged beasts had sent someone to the city gates and demanded, really his timely arrival. Something about an ambassador, they said. Much to his surprise and annoyance, it seemed they had not come to fight straight away. He hardly expected them to surrender, mind you, but this was unexpected. Naruto found himself somewhat nonplussed by that. If they had come here to talk, then they should talk. If they were here to fight, they should fight. None of this pointless pussyfooting about, keeping one foot in both camps. Nonsense, the lot of it. They really ought to make up their minds. An arm settled on his bicep and gave it a brisk pat, bringing him back to reality. Having second thoughts? He grunted non-committally, refusing to dignify her taunt with a response as he stomped toward what may or may not be his doom. Oh, my! Marika matched him step for step and teased him regardless. Have you gone mute, my consort? Whatever happened to that silver tongue of yours? A silver brow quirked her way, mildly bemused. I'll use it when need be. She bumped his hip with hers. Am I not worthy of it? Don't think it'd work on you. Her golden eyes twinkled. Are you saying I cannot be swayed? No, only that it would require action to move you. She hummed. Flatterer. Juxtaposed to the idea of leaving him alone, and despite a great deal of protest on Radagon's part, Marika had opted to follow him outside the city. Said something about it being her duty as the future queen and all that. He knew she was lying, of course. She just wanted to see the dragons for herself. He couldn't really blame her for that. After all, it wasn't every day one awoke to find a flock of them at your doorstep. She had full faith in Godfrey. Oren had wanted to accompany them as well, but well. I crave blood. Oren, no. He'd plucked the pale girl up by the scruff of her neck and gave her a shake. Bad Oren. Oren, yes, Lemmy slash. Yeah, probably best they left her behind with Radagon. Fighting was all well and good, but his second would undoubtedly try to start a massacre if a single WM looked at her funny. He'd rather avoid that for the time being, entertaining as it might be. He spied the dragon's emissary just shy of the gates. Someone awaited them, a regaliate buxom young woman clad in low-cut black robes. At a glance, she almost appeared human, but when one looked closer, they could see the discrepancies. Her eyes were an unnatural shade of gold, her pupils vertical slits. Likewise, her fair skin shimmered with scales, and a pair of pale horns jutted up through her ashen hair. A tail threaded through the hem of her robe, twitching restlessly upon the ground. Not human at all. Greetings. She placed both hands in long sleeves and bowed her head deeply. It did interesting things to her bosom and drew an amused hum from Maliketh, forcing him to focus upon the envoy's face instead. I am Florisax, chief advisor to Lord Placidusax. Be welcome. Right, common courtesies and all that. How he loathed them, but neither could he bring himself to be rude, even with an army on their doorstep. Why have you come here? Marika leaned past him, one hand over her brow to shade her eyes. And with so many friends. The envoy ignored her, she only had eyes for him, much to his chagrin. You are Lord Godfrey, are you not? He blinked once. I am. Excellent. As he looked on, she withdrew her arms from her sleeves and offered him a single shimmering scale of stone. The Dragon Lord bids you meet him on the field of lightning flowers in 3 days' time and face him in single combat. His brow furrowed, baffled by the term as much as her unexpected offering. Lightning flowers? Fulgerbloom, Marika interjected softly. I know the place. 'Tis not far from here. Interesting. On a whim, he looked back to Florisax. And when I win? Florisax made an amused noise. Confident, are we? Not at all. He rumbled a laugh. I'm simply a good judge of character. Were the dragons truly confident in their chances, they would have attacked straight away without warning. In doing so, they could have laid waste to thousands before he could intervene. That they'd requested single combat instead either suggested weakness or a lack of faith in their combat ability. You didn't march an army like this to your enemy's doorsteps only to bargain. No, something was amiss here and he knew it. Florisax must have realized he'd read her like a book too, because she made an odd noise caught somewhere between a laugh and a hum. Very well, she said. Triumph, and we shall consider you an equal and an ally worth following. Lose, and you shall be devoured. There it was again, that beautiful bluff of bravado. And if I refuse this challenge? Her face closed down. Then we shall lay waste to Lendl. He smiled at her. You may try. Do or do not. There is no try. She huffed and lifted her chin to glare at him. We will succeed. Such arrogance. Truly, the people of the lands between amused him to no end. Is that what you believe? Now, Marika butted in once more, all smiles. A fight sounds most pleasing, but should it not be with me? I am, after all, the leader of Lendl. Florisax leveled a flat stare upon the Suntobi queen. And you are? Emotional damage that was downright cold. Naruto nearly whistled at the dismissal. Not so Marika. Her smile died an ugly death as she absolutely hissed at the so-called messenger. Excuse me? Did I stutter? Placidusax's envoy looked her up and down, found her wanting, and promptly shook her head. Our challenge goes to the strongest. You, clearly, are not? A muscle jumped in the goddess' jaw. Cheeky lizard. Florisax sniffed severely. Impudent cow. What was that? The envoy's smile was all teeth. I'm sorry, I mistook those massive milk bags on your chest for udders, her head tilted just so, pale strands of ashen hair falling over one eye. Or was I mistaken? Marika's hammer materialized in her hand with a sharp shimmer of gold and descended thrice as fast. The ground splintered between them, carving a crater into the earth. Florisax reacted instantly, leaping back to conjure a wickedly curved spear of stone to her free hand before adopting a ready stance of her own. A beat of silence passed between them as the two warriors stared one another down. Naruto idly wondered who would attack the other first, idly considered stopping them, then thought better of it. Why should he feel the need to interfere? Marika could defend her honor just fine. Besides, he'd been bored all day and there was nothing quite like a brawl in the mud to get the blood pumping. Marika surprised by straightening up with a laugh. You have decent reflexes, dragon. I had aimed to maim you with that. Only to maim, you say? Florisax never released her spear, but she did lower it to consider the massive divot in the earth where she'd been standing a moment before. You're not half bad yourself. We had thought you all bark and no bite. There it was again. That strange noise in her throat caught somewhere between a laugh and a hum. I am most pleased to be proven wrong. Naruto looked left. Naruto looked right. Naruto found no answers in sight. What in blazes was going on here? What did he miss? 3 days' time, then? Marika asked. Florisax hummed. Indeed. He accept. So be it. Florisax stepped forward and pressed the scale shard into his hand, fingers lingering over his own in passing. We look forward to the outcome and what may follow between us? Naruto accepted the scale from her with a hum and rubbed it between his fingers. Strange, it felt curiously warm to the touch. Why did he have the feeling he'd just agreed to something more than a fight? Marika hummed into her hand. You'll see soon enough. Would he? You accepted? Radagon disagreed, obviously. From the moment they returned to the war room to find him and Orin, he began to complain. It's a trap, of course. He slammed a pale hand down upon the wartable, looking fit to spit. Clearly they mean to isolate Godfrey and put a bolt through his heart. Orin, naturally, disagreed with him on principle. Then let us spring it and stab them instead, she said, dancing her dagger over her knuckles. Simple, no? Radagon glowered at her. You imbeciles think yourselves invincible. Mesmer once thought the same. Note his absence from this table. Naruto blinked, made curious by the mention of someone he'd never met. Who is Mesmer? No one of concern. Marika physically and violently interposed herself between the two of them, loudly talking over any response Radagon might have given. Merely a noble warrior who died long ago and someone who we should not speak ill of, she amended with an angry glare at her kin. Isn't that right, brother? Radagon flinched as though he'd been struck, but didn't back down, not at first. Marika stared him down, stern as stone, until he finally capitulated. As you say, sister? She smiled thinly. Then we proceed as planned. Radagon thumped his fist down again. I do not consent to this. Your consent is not required. You will remain here to watch over the capital while Lord Godfrey meets this Dragon Lord in battle. Worry not, I will go to watch over him. Can you not see the foolishness of this? Naruto rolled his eyes, and in a rare lapse, snapped at him. Stop complaining, would you? You're not needed here. In hindsight, perhaps he should have chosen his words with a bit more care. Aggravated, Radagon immediately swept his sword forward. Naruto didn't even deign to block, if only because Orin's dagger reached Radagon's neck first. The man's golden blade stopped just shy of his face, close enough to caress his face. Exasperated, he gripped the blade and forced it down, uncaring of sparks it drew against his flesh. He couldn't even cut him as he was now. Please try, little lordling, Orin crooned darkly, drawing a bead of blood from said lord's throat. I beg you. It will bring me great joy to slice your sinews and wear your skin as a cloak. It was tempting to let her carry through on that threat, but Marika would be upset. Orin, release him. Marika clicked her tongue. Radagon, drop your sword. Both obeyed, albeit begrudgingly, one louder than the other. This is a fool's errand, you'll see, slapping his hand against the table. Her brother seized his sword and stalked off. Just you wait. Marika heaved a sigh at his departure. He's going to make trouble? Obviously. What's the worst that could happen? He paused, grimaced now, recalling his luck. On second thought, don't answer that. Orin, keep an eye on him. Take a leg if you have to. His second grinned at the implicit promise of violence and vanished in a sensual swirl of bloody mist. Marika leaned into him the moment she was gone. Now then, my consort, shall we prepare? He chuckled. Heavy is the crown. 3 days flitted by in an instant. He arrived at the lightning grounds as requested, but found no one there. Perhaps that was something of a misnomer. They did find someone there, yet for all appearances there was no dragon. Only a man in dark robes awaited him and Marika, a scarred veteran, bearing with pale hair and milky white eyes, his body clad in a battered gray robe, leaning upon a wooden walking staff. Upon seeing them he bowed once, his long, dark hair swaying ever so slightly in the wind of the coming storm. For all intensive purposes he seemed little more than a hermit. A mere stranger at best. And yet, I bid you greetings, Lord Godfrey. He rose from his bow, smiling. I understand you are a warrior of great renown. And you're the elusive dragon lord, he shot back. A lizard masquerading as a man. Marika clicked her tongue at his side. Did you think to fool us? As though to echo those very words, a bolt of crimson lightning crackled in the clouds high above, then lanced down into earth below, momentarily illuminating them both. The Fulgerbloom drank it in greedily, but even the lightning flowers couldn't consume it all, leaving skittering sparks of scarlet shooting across the grass. It tingled at his legs, but he didn't move, not an inch. He remained firmly fixated for his foe. A small smile touched the older man's face in their shadow, if indeed he was a man at all. So certain are you? He nodded once. I am. The man tilted his head. How could you tell? Several things, he counted off on his fingers. You smell of ash, for one, to say nothing of your presence. Then there's your attitude. The man chuckled ruefully. And here I thought I'd shape-shifted perfectly. I can also see your soul, he pointed his way. You have 2 heads. The Dragon Lord grinned. Close. Not so long ago I had 5. He scowled. Show me. The man before him cast aside his staff and shattered in a shower of crimson light, revealing a mighty dragon lord unlike anything he'd ever seen. A great gravelly beast loomed over him with a roar, wings spread wide. The heavens themselves lanced out with lightning, carving crimson furrows in the earth around him. The sight stilled him for a moment, but in a good way, his heart thudding in excitement. Naruto looked up and up some more now. You really are a big bastard, aren't you? The Dragon Lord laughed. This is what you asked for, was it not? To us. But he could see his wounds, now. Great gouges in his hide, scars in his scales, revealing the golden blood beneath. And that was to say nothing of the 3 heads he was missing. He wasn't simply wounded, he'd been badly maimed by something or someone. Small wonder he wished to face him alone in single combat. He was prepared to die, but wished to do so honorably, to go down swinging, as it were. His stomach churned. There was no honor in a fight like this. Frowning, he slammed his axe down and strode forward. Placidusax considered him intently, but neither of his twin heads made any threatening moves, even when he stopped just beneath him. What are you doing? He considered him for a moment, then shrugged. Something foolish. The wounds were still relatively fresh. Shouldn't be hard. He was wrong. It took a lot, more than expected. Energy rushed out of him the moment he laid hand on his wounds. The Dragon Lord's body tried to drink him dry. For his part, Placidusax grunted in surprise and tried to speak, only to yowl in pain and toppled backwards as his sundered scales simultaneously cracked and mended themselves. Naruto barely heard it, and he certainly didn't see it. The effort dipped hard into his reserves and drove him down onto a knee. He heard Marika holler something from the sidelines, but he couldn't be sure with all that ringing in his ears. No, wait, his hearing was coming back. "You stupid noble bastard." Through his brightening vision, he watched her fling up her arms. "You just had to do it, didn't you? You just had to make things fair." A quintet of shadows fell over him. Naruto looked up and found 5 heads staring back at him and grinned. Far from feeling fear, a thrill of excitement shot through him. Here at last, he had a proper fight. Finally. It was like looking at a hydra with wings glorious. "You have my thanks for my restoration, but you've wasted your energy." Placidusax chided him. "This fight may not be in your favor now. Nothing is a waste." He pushed himself upright with a grunt, briefly bracing one hand on his knee to rise, heedless of Kurama's complaint. "You want to talk about wasted lives? I know a thing or two about that. I wasted my first one. All the people who died following me. Both ninja and not." He shook his head ruefully. "All those who died in service to a future I promised to bring about. Did they waste their lives? Did I waste mine?" Another shake of the head followed the first. "No. What makes you say that? Look around you." He gestured to the crackling flowers, many still sizzling with red light. "Each of these represent a life I could end, a life for which I bear full responsibility. If I'm to be Elden Lord in this life, I'll face it. Now, I've give you courtesy enough. Prepare yourself." Placidusax considered him for a long moment. "Godfrey of the Barbarians. Consort to Marika. Elden Lord. I owe you a debt I may never be able to repay. No matter the outcome of this battle, I will not forget you. Keep your debts." He crossed both arms before his chest. "I didn't come here to kill a cripple. I'll either fight you in your prime, or not at all. You may live to regret those words." Not. He let the noble facade of Godfrey crack for a moment, revealing the boy beneath. "The only thing I'd regret was a throne fight." Placidusax boomed a sudden laugh with all 5 of his heads. "So let it be. I pray you survive this battle, Godfrey." Retrieving his axe, he hefted it high and lunged forward. The Dragon Lord met him halfway. Battle was joined. "I've gone by many names. Upon my name. It was the..."
Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification. So when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.